So it's February 23rd, 2020. Welcome to Potkaars, which is normally a pot with candle, but yeah, I couldn't bring a candle on the airplane, and I didn't have time to buy one. But this is recorded from London, and my guest is Lisa Ling. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I was in a hurry to make the appointment with you because I was walking past Belmarsh prison, and there was tents in front. The people, a couple of just a small camping thing. People protesting there, and I was looking for the people in there. They weren't home, but they were actually in front of the prison doing interviews. And Assange's dad was there, and Yanis Varoufakis, and then a couple of cameras and people doing interviews. No mainstream, no big media outlets, just activists. But there you have it. So I only barely made the appointment with you. Great that you're here. Last time we talked was October last year, and I asked you to take us back to when Assange made his publications, if you will, back then, and who he was back then, and who he is now, how he's portrayed now, and what's going on as you see it.
Well, basically, what I want to do is try to, posit some things out there and get people thinking about, some different alternatives to what the media has said. I mean, one huge example that's in my mind, for example, is Facebook, right? We heard about Cambridge Analytica. We heard how Facebook interfered in our elections by, spreading false information to targeted audiences and all of that. So the question I'd like to throw out there first is, should we call Facebook a non-state hostile intelligence actor? I mean, this whole thing about justice, it's harder served on the people that we don't agree with.
So wasn't Facebook initially seeded with government money, or am I mixing them up with Google? I'm referring to the non-state part.
I think you're mixing them up with Google.
Oh, all right.
But they do have some, interesting folks on their board. But I don't want to go down that particular rabbit hole with Cambridge Analytica and people's data that's probably still in use now to interfere with, the electoral process and all of that. What I just want to posit is let's think about these things. The word non-state hostile intelligence actor, to my knowledge, didn't exist before it was applied to Assange. That's the first time I had ever heard it. And I worked with intelligence agencies, so it was interesting to me.
Was that term invented for Assange? That's the way you look at it?
That's the only way I know how to look at it, because I just never seen that word used before. And you would think that in my kind of work, I might have heard that. And I want to think about like some of the things that have happened throughout our history. Because basically, I think wasn't Assange on 2 years of house arrest, and then he found out that there was an investigation into him, and he ran into an embassy in the UK, and he was pretty much there ever since, being surveilled. And it still blows my mind that they had surveillance cameras in his bathroom, and that his lawyers had to meet him in the bathroom where they thought there wouldn't be cameras. If we talked about these things, this kind of invasive surveillance in any other context, people would be mortified, really. But we've been hearing a lot about one side of the Assange story. And what we don't hear too much about in America is stories about how he helped with SecureDrop, how he basically changed the face of how we navigate things with a digital environment, with news.
It's a sidestep, but I take it you're familiar with SecureDrop now that you mention it.
Oh yeah.
So let's say you're a whistleblower, someone's a whistleblower, and he wants to volunteer their information to newspapers, to news outlets. Well, you could call the journalist and hope that they do source protection. What you could also do is volunteer it to a channel, a third party, that would then in turn deliver it to certain news outlets. And well, SecureDrop is what's being used in the United States. My question is, how was that developed? And do you know global leaks and pub leaks as in a contrast to that? Do you have an opinion on that?
So I basically just heard about those things yesterday, and what I really want to point out is that that Assange with others, with the gentleman that we call the internet's golden boy, and I mean he's pretty much mythological. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And
Aaron Swartz.
Aaron Schwartz and other people. They basically were on a new frontier, this new digital frontier. And what we were finding out, I mean, if you've got license plate viewers, if you've got cameras, if you've got all of the stuff surveilling where you go, the metadata on your phones, if you have all these things happening, how is it, if you have a piece of information that's in the public interest, you want to remain anonymous and you want to bring that to a news source? How do you do that? And there really wasn't a decent method to do that. So basically, one of the things that these folks did was help us to navigate and even to define that this was necessary and to put it out in the public sphere so people understood that that they needed to be a lot more careful in the new digital age.
So lately, so you say I just heard of it yesterday. Do you mean global leaks and publics? Did you hear of that yesterday?
Yesterday, yeah, I just had heard of those yesterday, but the idea of it,
Hang on. It takes me to a question, because so back in the day, 2006, I believe WikiLeaks was started, and then Chelsea Manning volunteered information to WikiLeaks, and that was the war crimes basically of the United States happening in Iraq. Well, there wasn't anything other than WikiLeaks to anonymously leak that kind of information on a secure level, to the extent WikiLeaks was secure. And then around that time, I think, but correct me if I'm wrong, SecureDrop was developed, and after 2010, another software initiative was developed, was Global Leaks. Now, I just interviewed one of the directors, one of the people on the board of PubLeaks, which is based on Global Leaks. And I was thinking, well, that's a cool initiative, but now I'm not so sure anymore. And I wonder, does the community have an opinion about SecureDrop versus PubLeaks, and which one would be, how they differentiate? Because SecureDrop, that's used in the United States. I mean, you see that on certain big news outlets, where PubLeaks is shown on the Dutch news outlets.
And I mean, I haven't looked at PubLeaks at all. I know that if you have a proper implementation of SecureDrop, it is one of the safest ways that you can get information to a journalist. So. All
right, let's make this a call to action. So anybody who's investigated in Global Leaks and PubLeaks and how that thing works, please get in touch. I want to know. I want to learn more. The interview with the director of PubLeaks, that was cool, but it wasn't Dutch, so yeah, I can't relay that to English-speaking audience. But I do want to dig into that deeper, and same goes for SecureDrop. I want to dig into that one deeper as well. So if somebody wants to,
or even other methods to get information, especially in the times that we live in right now. It's so crucial that the public get information that they have the right to know, that governments want to keep from them.
So I was walking to my bed and breakfast here in London because I'm going to be with the protesters and the activists in front of court and in front of Belmarsh prison. And I saw interviews being delivered in front of the prison to a very small scale. Where are the big cameras? I mean, there was activism radio and a German outlet, but it's not mainstream media. And I was at a demonstration in Amsterdam Saturday. It's like 5 people there. that's
wow.
But it has been 10 years already since they published about the wrongdoings in Iraq and such. And ever since then, we've had the defamation of Assange in the media. So yeah, and hardly.
Well, we can't confirm or deny any of it. There's two things that I know for certain, and that is that the documents that I've read regarding the extradition have to do with Chelsea Manning, the Afghan war logs, I believe the Afghan war logs, and for sure something that's really easy to talk about that people recognize or may recognize or should recognize are the collateral murder videos. And the reason why I want to put those out there is because there was, I believe, FOIA requests done to get, is there any information about this particular shooting where journalists were killed? And the public wants to know how these Reuters journalists died. And they were told no. So there's a couple of things that surround that. One is that President Obama put out the Minimizing Classification Act. And basically what that was supposed to do was minimize overclassification. But there was a big deal that was left out of that. And the Institute of American Scientists have pointed this out, that the definition of overclassification wasn't included. So how do you prosecute something that is ill-defined or not defined at all? And I just wanted to say that we've built this framework of secrecy that is against the public interest because of the same, fear-mongering that happened post-World War II. And what this leads to is, misinformation, all of the things that I've seen, timelines and things regarding Assange and what he may or may not have done into 2016. I've seen a lot of information, but I want to point out the extradition documents are not about the 2016 election. The extradition documents are about things like the collateral murder video. They're not, the extradition documents are not about certain hacking things that came from the intelligence services. None of that is on the extradition documents. The extradition documents have to do with the data dump that Chelsea Manning sent to WikiLeaks. And I really want to say that because when I start the conversation online, bunches of people jump on me, but what about our election? Exactly. What about our election? If there's something about our election, it should be on the extradition documents. It should be in some of our public discourse, because after all, we have the right to know if our vote has been infringed upon. I know that other conversations on social media have been publicized. For example, the one with Reality Winner and her sister. So it's not giving away sources or methods to say, we saw this bidirectional conversation on social media between these two people. I'm not seeing any of that out there. And I'm somebody who believes in justice for those that I absolutely disagree with and for those that I do agree with. But it seems to me that justice in this situation is not being carried out in the same way. And the only information that is being carried out, that is being disseminated to the public, is pretty much derogatory. And if that's true and backed up by evidence, okay. But I don't see that. And then the other thing, along with that, Chelsea Manning is ostensibly indefinitely detained. Now, I don't agree with everything Chelsea Manning has done. I don't agree with some of, her methods. But the fact of the matter is that we have somebody who's ostensibly indefinitely detained in the United States of America. And I'm not quite certain why people are not discussing this aspect of this case.
Well, that's the misinformation so I'm going to use you as a scapegoat because that's your country that's throwing misinformation through their big media outlets to the general audience, because Chelsea Manning she served her time and she was let out of prison by Barack Obama on his last day as president. So that's that. She's done her time. Now she's arrested again because she refused to testify in front of her secret grand jury. And the reason that she didn't want to testify in front of that secret grand jury is because he doesn't trust the grand jury process. So that's not not a legal situation I want to be in.
You mean because there's no check and balance on that process where the public knows what's going on, where even you could she can't even bring her, I mean, I want people to know you can't bring your attorney into a grand jury process.
So then she was arrested for contempt of court because she was bullied. They tried to bully her in testifying against Assange anyway, which she refused. And now she has a fine that's increasing daily with a small amount, and that's going to take all your life juice out of you if that happens. And once she's out of that process in a year and a half after she got arrested, that fine will have risen to like $440,000, like something she'll never be able to pay off. So that's Chelsea Manning. I wanted to get back on something you said on the media. You said when people approach you, when you discuss Assange with people on the street or what have you in the supermarket, they would go, well, what about our elections? Because that's the image that's imprinted upon them over the last couple of years, that he would have had a role in that. How do you think American media is going to report on the trial then? Because there's a huge disconnect about what's happening here in court and how it's going to be portrayed on your media, isn't there?
Well, I mean, that's assuming it will be portrayed on the media.
It will be silenced. So you think it's going to be on the 8 o'clock news?
No.
Oh.
And I don't think, I mean, look, I'm good with people investigating both sides of this argument. But like I said before, I am for equal justice. And it seems to me that our justice system is very selective. And you can take that from the people who are being pardoned now, right? I mean, you know, there's people who have done things in the public interest that could really use a pardon. And there's others, you know, who have committed egregious crimes. I mean, anybody should be able to see that there's a problem that the public needs to address with our justice system. And Julian Assange right now, the information surrounding his case isn't getting out there in any substantive way, just like other whistleblowers were silenced.
Well, Assange is not. So the people helping him out, that's why I'm here. The sole reason.
And Assange is not a whistleblower. I want to make that clear.
No, let's call him a publicist. Could we agree on that?
Yes.
Yeah, so there you go. But he is being charged with, or they want him, the United States, your country wants him on espionage charges. And these are my words. The one and only reason that they want him on espionage charges is that you cannot do a defense saying I did it in the public interest. You're denied to make that claim. And added to that, and that's new, you're denied your First Amendment rights.
Well, I mean, let's compare this with something else. If I walk out my door right now and shoot someone, and I end up going to trial, I can state my case. I can tell you, well, that person, you know, so let's say I just walked out there and shot someone, and that's all you know about it, right? That's it. You're going to look at me and go, oh, you murderer, right? But what if I told you that before I shot him, right, or her, right, that they had a weapon pointed at you? You're going to feel differently about that. And in a court of law, that information should be available to the jury, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah.
And so basically, I would have shot that person in self-defense. Maybe that person was 6'8" and I'm 5 feet, you know, a little over 5 feet, right?
Yeah.
I was terrified, and so I shot in self-defense, right? That should be information available to a jury in a trial. Now, the Espionage Act, I think it's called, I'm not a legal mind. I know plenty of excellent legal minds. In an Espionage Act trial, if what you've turned over is in the public interest, you're not permitted to say so.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you wanted the public to know that there was interference in our elections and you go to jury The only question that's asked is, did you turn a document over to a news organization? Yes or no? That's it. You're done. That's all you're allowed to say. Now, the other act that's being used against Julian Assange is the CFAA, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. It is another broad statute, law, whatever you want to call it, right? That is overly broad. So, for example, if I'm a 13-year-old kid and I log on to a video game, and that video game says for 18-year-olds only, I could conceivably be charged with the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act.
Hey, Lisa, is there any chance of United States regrouping and reforming those laws now that they're so blatantly abused? What's your outlook?
Well, I mean, we have to talk about them. I mean, the way these things happen is first, they're allowed into the public discourse. We have discussions. Maybe they don't need reform. Maybe they do need reform. Scholars, lawyers, pundits, we should be having this conversation. We should be thinking about these things, but we're not. We're focused on very little when it comes to these layered news stories, basically.
So it's a horrible thing to end this conversation with, but I overheard Yanis Varoufakis being interviewed in front of Belmarsh prison, and he was very composed and answering the German press at that time nicely, making compliments to German politicians, and say, well, I'm hopeful, and there's still a rule of law, hopefully, and there's chances for Assange. And I was sitting, watching that from a little distance, going, well, I'm not so sure if you really believe that, Yanis. What do you think?
I can't get into his head. I really admire him. The work that he's done is incredible. I mean, so I couldn't tell you whether he believes it or not. What I can tell you is that that there's a treaty between us and the UK. And part of that treaty is if somebody is a political prisoner, they're not supposed to be extradited. Sure. And if I believe in equal application of the laws and treaties and that sort of thing across the board, then I have to support Julian Assange not being extradited to the United States, because there is no way that you can take this case out of the realm of politics.
Well, yeah, so I'm a bit I'm not the positive guy here today. I need a candle. I miss my candle. Come on. John Kiriakou said, guys, we're torturing people in Guantanamo Bay. No. They're called enhanced. They're enhanced interrogation techniques. Waterboarding, you shouldn't call that torture. Then Nils Meltzer visits Julian Assange in prison with specialists and goes, United Kingdom is torturing, in a colluded effort with the United States and Sweden and Ecuador, is torturing Julian Assange. So the rapporteur for torture of the United Nations, Nils Meltzer, writes his letters. That's in his mandate. And if he gets an answer at all, the answer is, well, we are of a different opinion. And out walks that claim of torture. So you can claim he's a political prisoner all you like. There's, out of my head, 12 political prisoners in jail in Spain, 12 Catalans, political prisoners in Catalonia. And the only thing Spain needs to do is, well, we're of a different opinion. And that's it. So I agree with you.
The state has a monopoly on power, on violence. I mean, that is what's true. And so, I'd love to be positive about this. I'd love to say that, that there's going to be a positive outcome, but it's going to take people standing up for justice, for a treaty to be honored, for a man to have his day in court where, the other thing that I want to put out there is that let's talk about the 2016 election for a moment.
Yeah.
Did anybody ask him, hey, did you muck with our election? Did anybody ask Julian Assange? Has his voice on this topic gotten out into the public realm.
Well, they've been talking about Assange for 10 years now. Nobody's talked to him or has given him a voice. Well, that's what Thomas Drake said. The first thing they do is they silence you, and then they throw dirt at you in the court of public opinion.
And I mean, before all this dirt was thrown, he was a pop culture icon. He actually did things that took a lot of guts, a lot of conviction, and a lot of integrity in my worldview. I mean, he helped Edward Snowden, you know. He basically taught us how to navigate this new investigative journalism landscape. I mean, these are things that he did that were positive that have all but been forgotten.
Yeah, not by all, not by you, not by me. Now, so the way we're going to close here, the way I see a positive outcome in this, I'm with Varoufakis. I mean, you have to hope and you have to trust in the rule of law. But even should that fail, and even if he should be extradited, that, in my opinion, would be the last time that so blatantly international rule of law is violated, and that would basically end international rule of law. And
boy, that would set a devastating precedent where any journalist can be picked up from anywhere in the world and extradited here.
The thing is, no, yeah, well, that might be, that's not the consequence I'm talking about. The consequence I'm talking about is that faith in our governments is out the door the moment Assange is extradited. Now, when faith in our governments is out the door, both in your country and in mine, then that's government gone, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
And on that pleasant thought, you know, Larry Love may have set a precedent. The Larry Love case may have set, and that's, my fingers are crossed for that. So many activists, so many compassionate people stood up for what was right. And I'm hoping that this happens again.
Oh, yeah.
And if you given court and found guilty and there's evidence and all that stuff, so be it. But this whole torture and silence and all of that is not law, and it's not good governance.
Exactly. Thanks, Lisa. Take care. We'll talk shortly.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make.
You think I'm joking? Predator drones. You will never see it coming.
Laat staan dat ik kan ingaan over vuur.